The first question that was presented to me in the emails was, are there other songs like the title song of The Sound of Music, where the layout of the notes on the page, on this musical stave, correspond to the way what the lyric is saying, to the whole feeling of the song? And yes, there are examples. It's certainly not every song, but there are definite examples. The first two that I'll bring up will be other songs by Richard Rodgers and Oscar Hammerstein. And they bring up the whole question of what came first, the music or the words, which is one of those eternal questions about songwriting. In the Tin Pan Alley tradition, they used both methods. Sometimes the lyric came first, sometimes the melody came first. Probably more often than not, the melody came first in that tradition. And oftentimes people were in the same room together, just sort of working away at it, and you couldn't really tell which came first. The ideas are going around back and forth so quickly. Probably the most common strategy would be for the lyricist to give the composer a title phrase. Then the composer would take that phrase and create the melody under inspiration for that phrase, usually with some sort of idea that would be spotted in a particular part of the lyric at the beginning of a section or the end of a section. And then the lyricist would flesh out that title idea in the rest of the lyric to go with the phrasing of the music. But all of these methods are used. Rodgers and Hammerstein particularly tended to focus on writing the words first. Oscar Hammerstein the second writing the words first, Richard Rodgers then setting it to music. And so perhaps that's why there's particularly prominent examples in their work of this sort of sense of painting the words through the way that the music flows. And here are a couple examples. In the first show together, Oklahoma, there's the well-known song, The Surrey with the Fringe on Top, which is about riding along with the horses, holding the reins, and the main strain has that sense of clip clop, clip clop, clip clop, clip clop. Chicks and ducks and geese better scurry when I take you out in the Surrey. When I take you out in the Surrey with the fringe on top. You can sort of see the fringe on top hanging down, the little thing. But that sort of sense of boom, 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 as you're jogging along with the horses, is very clear. And then the better scurry, you can sort of almost see the chicken sort of scurrying out of the way of the horses, out of the road. And so, of course, that same melody gets repeated with different words, sometimes not particularly, no longer particularly painting the sense of action in the words themselves, but still it imbues the whole song with those images and that feeling that come from the beginning of the refrain. There's Rodgers and Hammerstein's second project together was the film State Fair, and again Hammerstein created a lyric which he presented to Rodgers to set the famous "It Might As Well Be Spring," and this is the way the beginning section goes. I'm as restless as a willow in a windstorm. I'm as jumpy as a puppet on a string. And of course that jumpy as a puppet on a string has this jumping intervals that sounds like somebody dangling the puppet, the marionette, on a string in this sort of slightly rhythmic but also slightly unpredictable manner. And of course the end of the phrase has this sense of irresolution, on a string, and that goes with a sense of irresolution of this character who feels like they're sort of jumping, restless and unresolved, and they can't settle down to anything. So there's another example. I was just watching one of Neil Brand's documentaries. I don't know if your university has the Box of Broadcasts database, but if it does, Neil Brand's documentaries are worth watching. He has an interesting take on the song from Carousel, which was the third Rodgers and Hammerstein project together. Your Queer One, Julie Jordan, which they're talking about the spinning of the wheels in the mill where they spin cloth. And and the music is spinning around and around and around underneath the tune, and so that's another instance from Rodgers and Hammerstein. There are certain instances where the harmony seems to be doing a kind of sense of painting too. Cole Porter's well-known song "Every Time We Say Goodbye" has this section that goes, "When you're near, there's such an air of spring about it. I can hear a lark somewhere begin to sing about it. There's no love song finer, but how strange the change from major to minor. Every time we say goodbye." And so when he goes, "There's no love song finer, but how strange the change from major to minor." He's doing all sorts of things in terms of major chords and minor chords underneath that particular phrase to help convey the sense of shift that happens when the beloved one goes away and says goodbye, and this person is left with this sense of, ah, I've gone from happiness to sadness. Now, I'm not particularly adept at understanding or analyzing harmony. I've read things that say that he actually goes from major chords to minor chords at that point. I've also heard somebody else analyze it as going from minor chords to major chords, which seems to contradict the song, but at any rate, there's a strong sense of harmonic shift there, and that's the basic point. Then there's also, Neil Brand was analyzing Harold Arlen's song, "That Old Black Magic." I think it was in that documentary. And I think it was in one of his shows. But at any rate, I read this interesting analysis of part of that song. Part of the lyric by Johnny Mercer to Harold Arlen's tune goes, "Round and round I go. No, down and down I go. Round and round I go. Like a leaf that's caught in the tide." And of course, there's that sense of repetition, like the spinning of the leaf being caught in the tide again and again and again. But also underneath that is this sense of so they analyzed in this documentary, a sense of the harmonic changes, also working with what's called a circle of fifths. So that's also sort of this sense of this circle of fifths going on there, and this strange relationship to the words. So that is just some examples of what you might call word painting, or if in the case of That Old Black Magic, the tune came first, then in a sense it's note painting to sort of give a sense of visual imagery that goes along with the notes. One way or the other, there are certainly examples within this repertoire.